Hey everyone, I just wanted to do a quick update about my crap low, shame low, crap high, shame high, whatever you want to call it. Lots of different names going around for this pick and place machine that's definitely more place than pick, although I have managed to improve it somewhat. I wanted to first start off by saying that no, I've not heard anything from Charmhigh at all. I don't believe that Naomi Wu has heard anything from Charmhigh as well. For those that aren't aware, I don't know how you'd not be aware, Naomi Wu got involved in the discussion, I should call it a discussion, on Twitter a few days ago, and she put her thoughts behind what was going on and the way Charmhigh were acting, and sent them a letter in Chinese that was then she translated with Google Translate into English. It was a very interesting read. It had a statement translated loosely that, you know, rat poo in the porridge spoils it for everyone, and that's kind of what Charmhigh are doing. So I've been left on my own still to sort through this, but when I say on my own, not really. The community has been fantastic. I've had so many comments on my YouTube videos and as I mentioned before, Discord. I left off Twitter, Facebook, direct emails. It's been really fantastic, and lots of people with different ideas, some of them really left field, not really applicable, and some of them have been fairly close to things that I've been working on but aren't really a solution. So the more and more I play with the machine, the more I realise that the majority of the issue is just crap feeders. They're really, really crap feeders. The tolerances in them are just terrible. So everything I've been doing is to try to work on improving those, but not by modifying the solenoid on the feeders. That's just not on the cards. There were a lot of people suggesting that I do this to the solenoid, do that to the solenoid, pull the solenoid apart. Not going to happen, shouldn't have to happen, because no one else that's using Yamaha feeders have to go to that level to get their feeders working. The improvement I have made, which I'll go through in a moment, has improved the pickup capability by about 50%, meaning that I'm getting about 50% less bounce on my parts, which is great, because that also means I have 50% less swearing and cursing when I'm sitting there fixing them after a board is built. So that's kind of like a double win for me. But it still requires the air changes that I made. So I've still got the regulator on there, dropping the pressure a little bit, and the per feeder individual inline valves to try to reduce the rate to find a balance for every feeder. And I'm getting a little bit closer, constantly tweaking those little valves. Unfortunately, there's no visual readout for them, so I have no idea how much I'm changing it. It's completely arbitrary. So it's just a matter of constantly playing and constantly playing. One of the issues with pneumatic feeders in general, I guess, and specifically my setup, is that over time, for every panel that I build, the tolerances of all of my tuning changes. So where a pickup position might be perfectly aligned at the start of my first panel, by the time I get to my third panel, it's shifted. And it's shifted for several reasons, but mostly because I'm playing around with the air flow and air pressure, and that just means that it's potentially not getting the perfect push of the next part every time it needs it. It might be out only 1/10 of a millimeter every time it does a push, but over time that really stacks up. So I'm finding ongoing knock-on effects to the changes I've made, but overall I'm getting boards out of the machine. And for the first time today in this video, I'm going to actually show you the machine running. Am I still getting some missing or dropped parts? Sure, but very few. Am I getting upside down parts or back to front parts? I am, but as I said, 50, maybe 60% less than I was getting before. I still have to be as diligent when I'm checking all the boards to make sure all the parts are right, because the last thing I want to do is have to fix them after a reflow. That just means I have to rework the boards, apply heat to the board again unnecessarily, when it could just be a resistor sitting on its side or a diode or an LED back to front. So I'm trying to catch all of those before I reflow. Let's have a look at the machine running, and then I will explain what crazy change I made that has made the most difference so far. You won't believe what it was. Okay, we're back at the bench with a feeder. This is a blue handle feeder, so a 2mm pitch. This is an untouched feeder straight out of the box. I just opened it just now. And I want to just explain the mechanics around here of how it's supposed to be holding the tape still, and then show you what I discovered and what I've temporarily done to fix it. In this section here, where the tape goes through, you'll see that there's a little bit of metal just in there, which is called a leaf. And that's actually got a spring-loaded bend to it. It's attached just at this point here, and that is supposed to push the tape up into the top of this section here and hold the tape still. Now I'm going to just feed a bit of tape in, just to kind of show you how it works. It's going to be a bit difficult because this tape's a little bit bent. I need to grab some tweezers just to help me along. Okay, so when the tape is in there and it's sitting inside the sprockets, when it's closed, this locks down. You heard that snap, right? And you can see that the tape is inside the sprockets there, so it'll be advanced when I push this down. The shutter's open, and then when I let go, the tape is advanced, and the cover tape would be pulled back. Now the only thing that's holding this tape still inside here is that spring that's pushing up, and it's supposed to be pushing up against the top section of this. So not this shutter, not the tongue here, but what that's sitting on, which is this section here, that is what's holding the tape still, vertically, just in here. And this section here is where the cover tape goes into and is pulled back from. So everything from this point here up into where the part is exposed on the shutter is all open. There's no cover tape on it. Now, what I found is, on the 2mm pitch feeders here, is that the gap inside for the tape to sit, so the vertical height here, between the tongue pushing up and it hitting the top here, is quite a bit of space. Now when I say quite a bit, it's tiny. We're talking about maybe 1/2 millimeter. But that 1/2 millimeter is a problem because an 0402 resistor is 1mm by 1/2 millimeter. And if there's a 1/2 millimeter gap in there and there's no cover tape on the part, that means the part has the ability to flip on its side. There's enough room there. Now, this top section here can't go down any further, right? It's locked in place. And not only is it locked in place, but it's kept down by a spring that's connected just here and is tensioned by this screw. So this gets turned, which makes the spring loading that what snapped into place before. If I just open this up, this spring section here, that's directly related to this spring. Now, this is completely locked down right now, and this spring is tensioned really tight. Very hard to get it any tighter than this. But have a look at this. Do you see that little bit of movement? I'm not pushing very hard, and it's only a tiny bit of movement. But once again, that tiny bit of movement is another 1/2 millimeter to millimeter. Right, the pivot point's over here. So it's pivoting on that. That tiny bit of movement there is even more space for a part to flip around. Now consider that a plastic tape will be potentially thinner than paper tape. That gives it even more space for things to move around. This can't be tightened down anymore, and the leaf that's in there can't be bent up anymore. It's a fixed set of tensioning. And here is a leaf from another feeder, just to show you. So, although I could potentially bend this even more, the way it locks into the feeder doesn't allow it. It stretches it back. It's screwed on one end, and it's locked into the front here through this little tab. So it doesn't really matter how much I bend it, it's going to pull it back anyway. And interestingly, this is from one of my feeders that I was having a lot of problems with for my FETs. When I opened the feeder up to check the calibration of the feeder through here to make sure there was no backlash, this all has to come out. And when it came out, I noticed that this particular leaf is damaged right across where a grub screw sits. Very hard to see. Let me see if I can get closer. There's a crack along where the grub screw is. I don't want to break it, but it's now bent out of shape. Like the tensioning of this is gone because of this section that's broken here, which is one of the reasons I was having so many problems with my FETs, and switching it to a new feeder that didn't have a broken leaf improved things quite a bit. So what I ended up doing was the complete opposite of what Charmhigh recommended, which was to take this tongue that sticks in here, and instead of bending the tongue out, because they said the tongue was scraping the parts and making the parts jump, instead I pushed the tongue down aggressively, as hard as I could. This is a brand new feeder, hasn't been used before, and there's a gap between the tongue going in and the tape of about 1 millimeter in there. But there isn't if I do this. Okay, that got pushed right into the tape. That is now touching the tape. And because it's touching the tape, there's no room for the tape to move up and down anymore. Very little room anyway. The only amount of room is the wobble on the shutter, which is a little bit, right? And the wobble here, which there's a little bit. But that millimeter, or maybe 0.8 of a millimeter that I moved it down, has reduced my part bounce by at least 50% across the board. Not as good on my plastic tape and on the 4mm pitch, but better than what it was. Maybe a 30% improvement on my plastic tape, and maybe a 60% improvement on my 0402 parts, just by bending that down. But the fact is, the looseness in here is not enough to hold the tape. It looks like the tape is being held really tightly there. And at that point there it might be, but that is before the cover tape is pulled. From that point onwards, it's loose, because this bit of metal that it's sitting on starts to bend down, as you can see here. So that's a massive gap there, and that gap starts about here. So there's room there for parts to bounce. So this is the only thing I've found. Now, a few people have suggested, and something I've been playing with the idea of, is sticking something inside underneath the leaf, removing the leaf and putting something else, something 3D printed in there. But the problem is every part requires a different thickness one, depending on whether it's plastic tape and what part's inside there. So this is the only thing I've come up with so far that improves it, and it improved it quite a lot, but it's still far from good enough. Now, unfortunately, on an 8mm feeder, that's a 4mm pitch, there is no leaf inside. There's a spot for a leaf, but there isn't one. So there is no support at all inside the 4mm pitch feeders like there is in the 2mm pitch. And so this movement here, which, let's face it, look at this. That's really, like, I'm just using my nail. There's quite a bit of movement there. There is nothing holding down the tape inside. And if you look at the gap just here, between this bit of metal and here, look at that gap. There's at least that thickness gap all the way along of leeway in here for the tape, but nothing underneath pushing it up. Now, I can buy these online from AliExpress. There's a company that sells these. I could buy a whole bunch of these with screws and put them on my 4mm pitch feeders, but I don't have time to get these. I mean, how long is it going to take? You know, unless I pay $90 to ship them DHL. You know, I'm looking at 6-7 weeks to get these, and it may improve the 4mm pitch feeders and it may not. I don't know. But once again, pushing the tongue down has at least pushed the tape down further, and it's holding the tape more rigidly, I guess, than what this is. I mean, that's just terrible, the amount of space that's in there. So that's what I've come up with as a solution. It's still pretty terrible, and the fact that I've had to bend more metal on these feeders to improve things is pretty crazy. But step by step, I am getting the machine more usable. So, where does this all leave me right now? Well, I have a working pick-and-place machine, sure. It is producing panels, tiny pico panels. Okay? My priority is producing these. It's not fixing the machine right now. But the desire for me to have a pick and place machine with removable feeders and a lot of feeders so I can do a lot more work on the machine without having to swap parts out has become a bane, because it's that specific feature on this machine that is causing me all this grief. Right now I'd say that this pick and place machine is about 15 to 20% worse than my 36VA was. I'm having some actual placement issues that I need to calibrate, but I haven't even got to that stage yet because I'm still uncertain whether the placement issues are coming from a bad placement calibration acceleration issue on the machine or whether it's just a bad pickup. Now, checking the vision for the brief glimpse that you get when it's actually doing a pickup run shows me that the precision of the pickup is a problem, because I can see in the software it's going to pick up a part dead center on the part, yet when I look in the vision system after it's picked it up, I can see that it's sitting to the side of a nozzle. Now, because it's on the side of the nozzle, it still grabbed it and it can still take it to the board, but in between looking through the camera and placing it on the board, the part can shift. Okay, it doesn't have a proper good suction contact on there. So there's a lot of calibration that has to happen on this machine still, but right now I don't even know where to start because I'm still having pickup issues. And as I said, my priority right now is building tiny pickos. So maybe at some point when I get this production run done, I'll be able to go back and start again from scratch maybe and try to work out the kinks in this machine. Or maybe by the time I've done my tiny picos, I will just get rid of this machine. I don't know. Right now I feel like I'm getting diminishing returns for any more changes that I'm making, and every time I start tweaking and changing things and experimenting, I suddenly lose a day or two on production, and I can't really afford to do that right now. So I know a lot of people were wanting to see things like slow motion vision of what was happening inside the feeders as it was feeding. I can tell you that I'm having issues both directions. I'm having some part bounce and movement when the shutter opens, and I'm having some part bounce and movement when the shutter is closed and the tape is pushed forward and the cover tape is pulled. So it's both directions. No one solution is going to fit for everything right now. So all I can really do is soldier on, keep building boards as quickly as I can, fix them and make sure that there are no problems before I reflow them. And I think at this point in time, I'm just accepted that this machine is a piece of junk. It's nowhere near the level that it should be. Definitely not for 3 times the price of my 36VA. And I'm going to have to make some alternate plans going forward, because the thought of me producing my Pro S2 and my Feather S2 boards on here, it just makes me feel ill, because there are twice as many parts per board. So twice as many chances for parts that I have to fix. And I'm just not looking forward to that prospect. So I'll keep you updated. I'll do more update videos over the next week or two as I build more boards and I learn more about the machine. But right now, bottom line is, this machine, mostly a dud, whether it's just a whole bunch of faulty feeders or whether there's a design issue, whatever it is, it doesn't matter. The fact is, this machine in my office can't do what it was bought to do. And again, Charmhigh don't care. They won't take any responsibility for the state of the machine, and I am on my own with my community, but you know, unless you all want to come to my office and help me, I'm on my own. So yeah. I will say that I have 2 new feeders from Neoden that I am going to try on the machine. The 8mm 4mm pitch and the 8mm 2mm pitch. Now interestingly, the 4mm pitch feeder is exactly the same as the ones I'm using right now. Identical, including the serial number and the model number and everything. So it's coming from the same manufacturer. The 2mm pitch 8mm feeder is the level above the one I'm using. So there are quite a few, I think there's 3 or 4 in the range, and each one that sits higher has apparently a higher precision level. I don't know what that means, because I can't get any information that actually explains the differences. So the ones I got from Charmhigh were the bottom of the range of the 2mm pitch feeders. The one I've got from Neoden is the next model up. So I've actually swapped that out with the one that was running my FETs, but I haven't run it yet. It's sitting in the machine's currently off. I plan on doing a new batch of panels once I finish recording this video, so stay tuned for the results of that. Hopefully I'll get some better results out of that feeder Unfortunately, if it does work better, it's going to require me, if I choose to go down this road, buying 20 brand new feeders at $80 Aussie each, which is not a huge amount of money, but that's another $1,600 plus shipping, and it's more money down the drain on this machine when I really don't want to spend any more. If you enjoyed this video, you want to find out more about what's happening with my pick and place machine, please subscribe to the channel and click the alarm bell to be notified when I have new videos coming out. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, it really makes a difference to the videos and the algorithm. And to my patrons, you're awesome, thanks so much. Until next time, catch you later, bye.